meal together without any crazy kids around. Well, except if you have kids and you have to bring your kids. They're okay to come. But without all of the extra kids. So if you're a leader, plan on being a part of that. I'm excited for what God has done. I'm excited for what God is doing. And I'm excited for what God is going to do. Oh, God is always a God moving forward. Sometimes we get stuck and we need a break and we have to pause, and God never pauses. You know that? I just love that thought. God's just better than the Energizer Bunny. Okay? There's no batteries to charge because He is the source of everything. Well, for the next couple weeks, we are going to be looking at a series that I've entitled Facing Giants. And you may think, oh, this is going to be about David and Goliath, because obviously that's a picture of David and Goliath. And David is about 2 inches tall, and Goliath is huge in that picture. But we all know the story of David and Goliath, I'm going to guess. A young teenager, probably 16 to 19, goes to the battlefield not as a soldier, but as a delivery boy of bread and cheese, and sees Goliath challenging the entire Israelite army and is offended for his God, that someone would dare to speak against God and His people. And David, this young man, takes on Goliath, a 9-foot warrior, 9 feet tall. Okay, his spear, they say, the tip of his spear and his spear weighed over 50 pounds. How big do you got to be to wield that around? Okay, his shield, they say, weighed about 125 pounds. That's more than I weigh. That's a lot of weight. What are you laughing at? At one time, that was more than I weighed. So, the whole secret of the story of David is that David didn't compare himself to Goliath. Okay, that's what you got to hear this before we go any further in this message. David did not go to that battlefield and say, I'm 5'7" and he's 9 foot tall. He is decked out in armor that weighs more than me, and I have a slingshot. I don't have any armor, protective armor. He did not do that comparison. Had he done that comparison, we would not be reading about David and Goliath in the Bible. Instead, David saw the shadow of Goliath and compared him to his God and said, how dare he speak against my God, who is way bigger than a 9-foot giant? And so in this series, we're not going to be hanging out with David or Goliath, though it is one of my favorite stories to tell. But I believe that every one of us have giants that we face in our lives. Now, we're just going to take a couple weeks on this. Literally, as I was just jotting things down, we could preach on this subject till Christmas, with giants that come against us. But as I was kind of listing them, everything seemed to fall into a couple of different things. They all kind of have the root of one of these things. And so I really want to spend our time looking at these two things: doubt and fear. Doubt and fear. Okay? We all face them at some times, where we doubt our faith, or we doubt something that God has said, or maybe fear grips our hearts. Well, I can't do that because I'm afraid. So if you have your Bibles, I want you to hold them up, put your finger in Matthew 11, and hold that thing in the air. We haven't said this together for a while. John, put it on the screen so everybody can see it. This is the Word of God, and I know that it is true, and with God's help, I will do what it says. You know what that is saying? It's saying we're not going to be just hearers or readers of the Word. We are going to be doers of the Word. Anybody can read the book. Lots of people have read the book. But what matters is if we obey the book. That's what we just declared together. In Matthew chapter 11, here's the text that I want to read today. It's these 2 verses, and it simply says, John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. Okay, here's the test. Who is this speaking about? John the Baptist. Thank you, Angela. Okay, where was he at? He was in prison, and what was he doing? No, we're not there. We're not there yet. What was he doing according to what we just read? He's hearing things from outside of prison of what is going on in Jesus' life. Okay? So he sent his disciples to ask Jesus, are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else? Pause. Who is this about? John the Baptizer. We call him John the Baptist, but he was John, the person, the forerunner to Jesus. He answered the call to be a voice in the wilderness. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. He has done what God has called him to do. And now he's been thrown in prison. And while he's in prison, he's continuing to hear all of the things that are happening outside of prison. Hey, did you hear that Jesus fed 5,000 people? Hey, did you hear? Yeah, Jesus went and he touched lepers and they got better. Yeah, did you hear? Jesus touched the blind man and the blind man can see. Hey, did you hear? Yeah, he's preaching to the whole crowd and he preaches with authority. All these things, and John is hearing them as he is in prison. He's hearing about the miracles. He's hearing about the healings. He's hearing about the huge crowds and how Jesus seems to love the unlovable. And hearing these things causes John the Baptizer to doubt. Now, do you not hear that? A man called and set apart by God. He's done his thing. That the Messiah is coming. He knows it. He even said to the other disciples, there is Jesus. He is the Lamb of God who has come to take away the sins of the world. Those are words that came out of John the Baptist's mouth. And as he is hearing all of the incredible things that is happening in Jesus' life, it makes him doubt. He's not hearing it and saying, wow, he fed 5,000 plus the wives and children? That's awesome! He's hearing that and saying, oh, is he really the Messiah? He's healing the sick. He's healing blind eyes, deaf ears, lepers with sores on their body, lame people getting up and walk and leaping. And instead of rejoicing in that, John doubts that Jesus is the Messiah. You got to catch that to get to where this guy is at. Jesus' actions actually cause him to question if Jesus really is the promised Messiah. Now, if you're like me, and I have that thought, that leads me with one question. Why? Why is he not rejoicing? Why does he not say, wow, look at all of those things. Jesus truly must be the Son of the living God, the Messiah that was foretold. But instead he's doubting. Why? Well, John the Baptist like every other good Jewish person of that time, believed that when the Messiah would come, he would overthrow the Roman Empire. Why? Because that was the struggle they were in the moment. That's what they were struggling with. They were under Roman oppression. So clearly, if a Messiah comes now, he's going to overthrow the Romans and he's going to put the Jewish people in command. That is what good Jewish people believed. Even, apparently, John the Baptist. That this most incredible thing was going to happen. Here's another part that I'm just guessing, and I never met John the Baptist. You may think I'm old. I'm not that old. Met a lot of Johns. But I'm also guessing that as John was captured and he was thrown into prison and he's there, I'm guessing he probably had this thought day one. Oh, go ahead. Lock me up. But I'm telling you, when Jesus hears that I, the forerunner to the Messiah, have been thrown in jail, you better watch out. There's no jail cell built that's going to keep me in, because Jesus is going to set me free. He's going to deliver me. There's no way he's going to let me be in this jail. There's no way he's going to let me die in this jail. There's no way some teenage girl is going to say, hey, I want his head on a platter, and my head will be severed off and delivered on a platter in a party. There's no way that could happen, because I am the forerunner of Jesus and he will not forsake me. I'm going to guess that might have been part of what was going on in John the Baptist's mind while he's in prison. Jesus is not going to let him down, but Jesus was not doing what John expected. And that really seems to throw John off guard. It caused him to face this giant of doubt, because things were not working out like he thought they should be working out. John had some unmet expectations. You ever have unmet expectations? Let me tell you an unmet expectation just happened to me Friday night. So Friday night I had the opportunity with my family. We clowned at an event. And as we're getting ready, I wear contacts only when I clown. I don't ever wear them. And so I had not clowned in I think about 2 years since we were in El Salvador. And so I'm getting everything ready early. I want to get the contacts in early because I don't poke myself in the eye that often. And so I gave myself several hours to get ready with these contacts. So I get them out of the drawer, I find the right ones, I get out the solution, and I clean them things really good, and then I put them in my eye. And I'm telling you, I put one in my left eye, and that thing burned like crazy. And I'm like, oh God, and I'm water, and I'm crying. So I'm like, I clean the other one, and I put it in that eye, and I'm expecting to see. That's my expectation. Okay? For an hour. I'm like, I'm just going to keep them in for an hour, then I'll pop them out. But I got to keep them in for an hour because I got to get my eyes used to this so I can wear them tonight when I clown. It's about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I finally get to the hour. I take them out. My eyes are just red. Crazy. And I'm like, so I go to get the solution to clean them again, and I notice it's nasal spray. Not a drop of snot in my eyes. None. Completely cleared it up. The bottles are very similar in my defense. I had an unmet expectation. You think something's going to go one way, but it doesn't work out like you think. Maybe you sit here today and you thought, man, you had a career path that you thought this is what it's going to be, and this is how my life's going to be, this is how this relationship's going to be, this is how my finances are going to be. And sometimes it doesn't work out like we think it's going to be. There are times in our lives when we may pause and we think, I thought it'd be further along. I thought I'd have more money built up in retirement. I thought, and it becomes these unmet expectations. Well, my question is, what happens? We understand what happens when that happens in our life. We have unmet expectations. But what happens when that happens to our faith? What happens when we think God's going to come through a certain way for us, and He doesn't come through at the time we think, or the way we think, or what we even think He should be doing? How do we handle when we have unmet expectations with God Himself? Well, today I want to look at 4 truths that can help us when we are staring down or up at the giant of doubt. I want to look at 4 truths that we can remind ourselves of to help us fight that giant. The first truth is this: God doesn't always live up to my expectation, but He always lives up to His Word. Some of you need that hanging on your refrigerator. God doesn't always live up to our expectations, but He always lives up to His Word. He's always faithful to His Word. Always. Some of us need to hear that because we live our lives as if God has failed us when an expectation isn't met. See, the truth is, this statement makes great preaching, but it makes hard living. It's a reminder that God's ways are not our ways. God's thoughts are not our thoughts. God's timing is not our timing. God's plans are not our plans. And those can make for difficult days. So what do we do when we doubt God? When we have those times when we're like, God, where are you? I have been standing in faith, believing you're going to do it right now. And I feel like when I pray that the heavens are made of brass, and my prayers just keep bouncing down. God, where are you? I got a reputation to uphold here as a believer. People are going to think that I'm not a person of faith if I struggle with a physical disease. If I have a problem in my life. God, why are you not doing what I know you can do? Well, let me start with this. If you have ever had one of those moments of doubt, know this: you're in good company. You're not alone. For one, we always feel like we're alone. That's one of the enemy's main tricks. You're all alone. Nobody has ever felt like you do. Okay? It's one of his greatest lies. No, you're in pretty good company. Job was the greatest believer of his time. In fact, when Satan was looking for someone to tempt and to go after, God said, hey, have you considered my servant Job? Yikes! God called his name out of heaven, out of all the people on the earth. Have you picked on him yet? X marks Job. God pointed him out. And Job, if you go to Hebrews 11, we find him enlisted in the heroes of faith. But can I tell you, not every day was he a hero of faith. He had some great moments of faith. We know that. But listen to what he wrote on, we'll call it a doubting day. He said, as mountains fall and crumble, as rocks fall from a cliff, as water wears on stones and floods wash away the soil, so you, speaking of God, so you destroy people's hope. Those are pretty harsh words to speak to God. He says, you always overpower them, and they pass from the scene. You disfigure them in death and send them away. They suffer painfully. Their life is full of trouble. And it's all your fault, God. Job, man of faith? Not on that day. Listed as a hero of faith. Someone that we can look to and we can look at his life and say, I want to be like that. Well, understand, not every day was perfect, even for Job. And he had days when he spoke awful words to God. He spoke awful words to God that could have said, I smite thee! Could have. And then there's Jeremiah. Jeremiah, a mighty prophet from God. But he had days when he felt like he was completely forgotten by God. He wrote in chapter 15, he says, why does my suffering continue? Why is my wound so incurable? He is speaking to God, your help seems as uncertain as a seasonal brook, like a spring that has gone dry. Hey God, you're all dried up. That's what he said. Remember we talked about God giving water into the desert? Jeremiah was saying, you got nothing to give. You're all dried up. You got nothing. Considered a great man of faith. Yet he doubted. Then even Elijah, the powerhouse of prophets. It was Elijah who called for the showdown between the prophets of Baal, 450 of them, against one. And they had a showdown, and he said, let's build an altar. Put an animal sacrifice on it, and let's call down from heaven fire. In which if your God answers with fire, then we'll worship him as the true God. But if he doesn't and my God, then we're going to worship him as the true God. And all day long, it says that they prayed and they prayed. They cut themselves. They did all kinds of ritualistic things to the god of Baal, little g, who has no power. And I don't recommend this, and it's a good thing Elijah didn't have Facebook, but he begins to mock them. Maybe your God is tired. Maybe he's taking a break. Maybe he's in the bathroom, the Living Bible says. Okay? He mocks them. And then at the end of the day, when it says it's time for evening prayers, Elijah rebuilds the altar of God. He lays the sacrifice on it. He digs a trench around it, and he asks for water to be brought in during a drought. They hadn't had rain in 3.5 years. And he says, let's take some of our precious drinking water and pour it. So it pours over the animal. It pours over the rock. It fills the trench around it. He prays a prayer that is like 40 words long. It's 2-3 sentences. And fire instantly falls from heaven and consumes everything. He then tells Ahab, get ready, it's getting ready to rain. And he goes and he puts his head down and he begins to pray. And he prays until it rains after a 3.5-year drought. That is the kind of prophet that this guy was. And then he should be floating high with Jesus. He has had a mountaintop experience. But then he gets a little note. He gets a little note from the queen. Little Queen Jezebel. We use her name frequently as we talk about bad people, don't we? It's thinking Jezebel. Okay? That's where it comes from. This little queen writes a little note. Dear Elijah, I'm going to kill you. Signed, Jezebel. And this great man of faith who just hours before saw rain come after a 3.5-year drought because he prayed. Who just hours before that saw and witnessed the killing of 450 prophets. He saw the nation of Israel turned back to God because God answered his prayer with fire. So what did he do when he got the note from the queen? He fled. He ran for his life. Almighty man of God. He doubts that God can help him. God who has just done all these incredible things. See, his mountaintop experience with God was followed by an attack of the giant of doubt. Isn't that how the enemy works, man? We have a great encounter with God, and do you not know that the next day the enemy is going to be there to put doubt in your heart? Why? Because he doesn't want anything good for you. It says, then he went on alone in the wilderness. For one, he probably shouldn't have been traveling alone. If you're a person traveling alone, doing church alone, even though you come, this is why we do life groups. So we don't do life, we want to do life together. Get involved so you're not alone in the journey. He went alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and he prayed that he might die. Just saw rain. Ground's probably still wet where he's sitting under that tree. That doesn't even build his faith. He's picturing fire coming down from heaven at the end of his prayer. Don't you know, if I prayed that prayer, I would just be crazy. Okay, God, anytime now. Anytime now. How about now? 3, 2, 1, go! 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, he prayed the prayer and the fire fell. You know, people who try to, I love this little story. This is free. So, you don't have to pay for this part. But people who try to discredit stories of the Bible, someone has come up with this whole theory that at the moment that he prayed that prayer, that a meteor fell from the sky and hit right there. Can I tell you that gets me even more excited? That if God can set a meteor on its course to come down at the moment that he finished praying, more power to him. That doesn't take away from the power of God. That just shows it's even more awesome. Oh, I love how people have to come up with something to discredit God. So, he says, I've had enough. Take my life. This is the great prophet of God who is dealing with suicidal depression within days of his greatest victory. Crazy. They probably didn't call it back then, but we have terms for all of that stuff now. But that's exactly what's happening. So if you've ever struggled with doubt or any of those other things, understand you are not alone. And that's where John the Baptist was. When he baptized Jesus, it says that the heavens opened, that a dove descended and it landed on Jesus. And then there was a voice from heaven that said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." John the Baptist heard the voice of God saying, "That is my Son." He heard that. But now, as he's in this place of doubt, it's not even a year later, who's in prison. He hears all the things that's going on with Jesus. And he says, "Are you the Messiah? Or should we keep looking for somebody else? The response should have been, hey, yo-yo, weren't you there when didn't you hear God speak? How did he get to that place of doubt? A place that looks to us like the giant of doubt is winning. John had seen God do all these great things. He had obeyed God. He proclaimed Jesus as the Messiah, as the Son of God, as the Lamb of the world. And now he's completely doubting all of it. And before we get too hard on John the Baptist, let's take a moment to hold up our mirror and look at our own lives. Because each one of us can also have great days of faith. We can have moments, those mountaintop experiences that we can look back in our life and say, oh, that was the day. That was incredible. And we can hear the voice of God. We can see the great things that God is doing. But all of a sudden, it seems like our life gets in a spot and we come to a rough spot or a rough patch. We may hear the words of a doctor speak things about our body that are devastating. We may have prayed for a loved one to get better, only to have them die, and we're now making funeral arrangements. Or maybe just somebody has hurt our feelings. They've done something to hurt us. And it's just got us all messed up. Or maybe it's one of those things that we just wanted things to be different. And we're still struggling. And in those moments, I promise you, the giant of doubt rises above every one of us, making us feel like we are about to lose everything. And we begin to doubt the goodness of God. We begin to doubt the promises of God. We begin to doubt the faithfulness of God. And it seems that God has failed us because He did not meet our expectations. And we need to be reminded of the truth. God doesn't always live up to my expectations, but He always lives up to His word. Second truth, they go faster. That one was only 20 minutes. We got three more. Second truth. So when John the Baptist is there, he's done what God has told him. He feels that somehow God has forgotten him. Let him get arrested. Let him get thrown into prison. He's alone. He's forgotten. And Jesus does not appear to be coming to the rescue. And he doubts. And that's our second truth. A prison perspective will always cause us to doubt. When we are in that low place and we feel alone, we feel abandoned, that giant of doubt rises up and we feel that prison perspective. You say, prison perspective? What is that? Well, let me tell you what it sounds like. Because two great theologians show us perfectly what this sounds like. Many of you will know the great theologians of Roy Clark and Buck Owens. When they wrote, gloom, despair, agony on me. Oh, that's somebody who has to groan right there. Deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it wasn't for my bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. gloom, despair, and agony on me. How many remember those great theologians? That's the sound of prison mentality. Okay? Oh, everything is bad. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. Guess I'll go eat worms. See, these gloomy, despairing attitudes only take us further on the path of doubts. And yes, John had to stay in that prison cell. But he didn't have to stay in the prison of doubts. He couldn't just say, I'm done with this, let me out. Nope, didn't work that way. But he didn't have to stay in a place of doubt. He and we can stand up even to the giant of doubt, regardless of the present situation that we are in. Because it's not about the size of the giant. It's about the size of our God. Third truth. Told you they'd go faster. Our faith is more important than our failure. When we have those moments, those times when doubt takes over, when it just grips us and we fail God in those moments, can I tell you that God looks beyond those moments of failure to see our future? He's more interested in your future than he is your failure. And some of you need to hear that 4 times. God's more interested in your future than he is any failure you've ever had in your life. Look at Simon Peter. Peter goes to Jesus before. He says, hey, I'm getting ready to go to the cross. Okay? You guys are all going to fall away. Peter, not me. Nope. I don't care about anybody else. I can understand the other 11, but Lord, not me. I'm not ever going to fall. Never, ever, never, ever, 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 never am I going to fall away. And Jesus says this in Luke 22. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you, each of you, like wheat. But I have pleaded in prayer for you, Simon, that your faith should not fail. You got to hear this next sentence. So when you have repented and turned to me again, strengthen your brothers. Something's wrong there. We're missing something. There's a whole sentence missing out of your Bible right there. Did you know that? I have prayed that your faith should not fail. Period. So when you have repented and turned back to me, strengthen your brothers. Did you catch that? Jesus knows that he's going to fail. He prays for him to have faith, and then he skips over the verse that says, you will fail. That's the verse that's missing. Because then it goes right into, when you have repented and come back, strengthen your brothers. That is a powerful statement. Jesus didn't have to include, you will fail. But it's there. You will fail. But when you have repented, when you've turned to me again, strengthen your brothers. He spoke to Peter about after his failure. Repent, turn back, strengthen others. He spoke faith. He spoke leadership. When this is all over, strengthen your brothers. It's a great passage. There's also the great story in Mark chapter 9. The man brings his son. He's demon-possessed. He's a teenager. Jesus has been up on the mountain having a great time with Moses and Elijah. the Mount of Transfiguration, we call it. Peter, James, and John are with him, so they missed this little excursion. But down at the bottom of the mountain the rest of the disciples are there, and people are still coming with problems. And so here comes this man. I have a teenage boy, and since he was little, then he's got demons. He tries to kill himself. He tries to hurt others. He tries to throw himself into the fire. He's out of control. And the disciples have already tried to cast the demons out. And we say, well, that wasn't their job. Oh, they had already done that. Just so you know, Jesus had sent them out, and they came back reporting, we even cast out demons in your name. So they had done this. But not this time. So as Jesus and the other three disciples come down, this man has some unmet expectations. Hey, I brought my son because I heard that if we came here, there would be help. And there's no help. Jesus asked him, how long has this been happening? He replied, since he was a little boy, the Spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can. Please help us if you can. Do you hear the doubt in his question? Jesus says, what do you mean if I can? Anything is possible if a person believes. And the father instantly cried out, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. What? I believe. I don't believe. I believe, but if you can help him, I think before you're hard on him, how many times do we have a backup to our prayers? Oh, I'm going to pray about this, but if that doesn't work out, I got 6 other things I'm going to do. Okay? How does Jesus respond to his on-again, off-again unbelief? Oh, I'm reminded of the Seinfeld show when they're told, no soup for you! Go to the back of the line! If you follow Seinfeld, you get that reference? You don't? I just spoke in tongues. Okay? We'll pray for the interpretation. Okay? Jesus didn't tell him, hey, leave. Go get some faith, and when you have some faith, you come back, and we'll see what I can do. But I'm not doing anything for you because you don't have faith. He doesn't tell him to go to the end of the line. He doesn't chastise him. What does he do? He heals his son. He sets his son free. And that's big for us, and here's why. This is the last truth. Even when we doubt, God is still with us. Even when you doubt, God is still with you. Even when I doubt, God is still with me. That's not just a statement that we throw out there that's like a platitude. Because in the moments where we doubt, it is important for us to know God is still with us. Even in the midst of doubt, even in the midst of fear or anxiety or depression or loneliness or those moments when we say, but God, I just don't know what's going to happen. God is still there. See, God never said, life will be easy if you follow me. There are some that preach that, and they will tell you, buy this book, you name it, you frame it, you claim it, and it's yours. They'll tell you that. Why, if you're not a millionaire by next Thursday, you've missed it, because God is going to make all of us rich. There's no promises in this book for any of that. All of that is coming on the other side. Okay? But in this life, there may be wealth, And if you're sitting here today, can I just remind you, you are in probably the top 1% of the entire world of being wealthy. Okay? So if you make over $50,000, $40,000, you're in the top 1% of the wealthiest people on the earth. So stop saying you're poor. Okay? You are wealthy beyond measure. Okay? But God never promises any of that stuff. You know what He promises? I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. When life is tough, I'm there. When you go through pain, I'm there. When your heart is broken because of sorrow, because of the loss of a loved one, I'm there. In the midst of suffering, in the midst of challenges and struggles, we hear Him say, I will never leave you or forsake you. He never promised an easy life. He never said you won't have any problems if you give your life to Him. It's an important truth to know that even on our dark days, even on days when we may want to say words like Jeremiah or Job spoke out, and our neighbors may be over there like a light, hold up a lightning rod, John, because I don't want to get struck. God's going to smite you because of your doubts. It's important for us to know that when our faith has been trampled by the giant of doubt, Jesus is still with us. When we look at John chapter 20, the Bible, the book we can always trust, it's Sunday night. It's an important day because that morning, Jesus had been resurrected. And that night, the disciples have not seen Him yet. They've heard Jesus is alive, but they haven't seen Him. And it's hard for them to believe because they saw Him die. They helped take Him down from the cross and prepare His body and put Him in a tomb because He was dead. Here's what it says. That Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. Peace be with you, He said. And as He spoke, He showed them the wounds in His hands and His side. And they were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. And again He said, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. Then He breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. So they are locked up in a room. The giant of doubt is winning. They killed Jesus. They're coming after us next. If they find us, they are going to string us up. They are going to kill us. Get in this hiding place. Lock that door. Don't answer that door for nobody. And we don't hear of the jingle of the doorknob. Jesus doesn't have a secret knock that He's waited, prepared for them. All of a sudden, behind walls that are secure, behind a door that is locked, Jesus is there with them. Man, what does that mean? That means when we can't get out, Jesus is already in. See, we serve a God that no door, no wall can stop. He can always reach us because He's always with us. The story continues, verse 24. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. And they told him, we have seen the Lord. But he replied, I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in His hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand in the wound in His side. Thomas is forever known as Doubting Thomas. Thomas the Doubter. Because his doubt caused him to lose his faith. And he stopped believing. I won't believe again unless I get to put my finger in the wound. Unless I get to put my hand in the wound. Then I'll believe. But I'm not believing anything short of that. He was having a crisis of faith. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. Peace be with you, he said. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe. And Thomas exclaimed, my Lord and my God. It was a crisis of faith, but when Jesus showed up, he was restored. See, I love that Jesus has already shown up for the others, but now he comes back to show up for one. He comes back for the doubter. He comes back for the one who has just kind of lost his way in all of this. The disciple who had lost his faith. And I think, you know what? I love that about Jesus. I love that because every one of us have had that moment when we see that Jesus comes just for us. He just takes that time. Man, I believe today, as I was preparing this week, as I've been praying for this morning, and just believing that someone here today has been facing the giant of doubt. And Jesus wants you to know, even if you're the only one, I came today for you. If you're the only one, Jesus wants you to know your moment of crisis can be over because I'm going to go with you. I want you to bow your heads this morning. And in this moment, if you would say, Pastor John, that's me. I have been a follower of Christ. That's not the issue. But as I have been following Christ, the giant of doubt has been overwhelming in my life or in an area of my life. And today, I just want to acknowledge and say, Jesus, I know you're here for me. And I'm getting in step with you. We're going to declare like Thomas, my Lord and my God. And today, if you would say, that's me, and I would just like to be surrounded by others who will love me, who will care for me, who will pray for me, because understand, we're not in this alone. And maybe you've come through a season of doubt and you're on the other side of it saying, that's not me today. Understand, it may be you in a week, it may be you in a month, it may be you in a year. But today it's somebody else. And today we're going to be here for them. And I'm going to ask you to do a hard thing. I'm going to ask in a moment, if this is you, I'm going to ask you to stand up and come right here and join me in this altar. And we're going to pray over you that God's going to do a great thing in your life today. If you're going to do that, I want you to get up and come right now. If that's you, I'm just going to ask for everyone else, if you know somebody up here who you will be willing to stand with them in prayer, I want you to come up here right now. I want everybody to have somebody with them. Stand behind them, stand beside them, stand in front of them. I don't care. But I want them to know somebody's with them. Can I tell you that today is a day of victory? Today is a day of victory. Because you are saying to the giant of doubt, you don't get to win. You don't get to win. Because it is as simple as calling out to Jesus, declaring our faith in Him. So we're going to pray for you right now, but man, I pray that you will pray. Wherever you are at, because every one of you, your situation's different. So you call out to God what you need to pray, and we're going to join with you in those prayers. Father, right now, I thank you for